A charge for $12, a renewal for $29, a delivery fee nobody flagged, a fund inside a retirement account that still says diversified while the weight underneath quietly shifts. None of it looks like the moment money got away from you. That is the disguise. Today's case is already on the board.
Most people expect financial damage to be obvious. A bad investment, a reckless purchase, a huge bill, a dramatic mistake they can point to later and say, that was it. But a lot of money does not leave that way. It leaves in smaller movements that repeat until they start acting like structure.
That is the case I want to open today, and I want to open it across 3 surfaces. First, the spending that keeps renewing itself. Then, the investing labels that look safer than they really are. Then, the retirement math that gives you a number without telling you what kind of life has to carry it.
Start with the easiest version to understand. A small purchase. Not a luxury car, not a bad investment, not a dramatic mistake. Just a small charge that clears your account so quietly it barely leaves a memory. Maybe it is food delivery because the day ran long. Maybe it is a subscription you meant to cancel. Maybe it is one of those purchases that happens because your card is saved, your address is saved, and the checkout screen knows you better than your budget does. The problem is not that one purchase. One purchase is rarely the case. The case is repetition. Money systems do not need you to make one terrible decision. They usually only need you to make a forgettable decision often enough. That is the part people miss. A $12 difference does not feel like a financial identity. A $15 premium does not feel like a future. A $29 renewal does not feel like a plan. But repeat anything long enough and it starts behaving like a plan, whether you meant to build it or not. That is the first clue. If money keeps disappearing and you cannot name the moment it left, look for the thing that repeats. Because a lot of personal finance advice points at the wrong scale. It asks, what is the big purchase? What is the big mistake? What is the one bad decision? Sometimes there is one, but often the damage is smaller than that. It is the convenience premium, the subscription stack, the upgrade cycle, the lifestyle adjustment that arrived after a raise and never left, and the $10 that feels too small to deserve a second look. Same number, different system.
That is where this gets interesting, because small money can either leak or build. It depends on the direction you point it. If $10 leaves every day through purchases you barely notice, the money disappears without leaving much evidence. You got through the week, you had the coffee, the upgraded lunch, the small convenience, the thing that made the day easier. That is not a moral failure. It is just a flow. But if $10 moves the other way into a low-cost investment account on a schedule you do not have to think about, the same small number starts doing a different job. It stops asking for attention. It starts buying time. That is easier to say than to feel, so let me make it concrete. Take the same $10 and run it in 2 directions for a long enough stretch. Direction 1, it leaks. Coffee upgrade here, app fee there, a convenience purchase you barely register. At the end of the week, the money is gone, and all you have is the memory of getting through the day a little faster. Direction 2, it gets redirected. Not into a fantasy stock, not into some complicated trade, just into a broad, low-cost investment account on a schedule that does not ask for daily discipline. The important point is not the exact return number, because markets do not care about your spreadsheet. The point is that one system spends the same small amount into the past, and the other sends the same small amount into the future. One disappears on contact, the other accumulates. And if you need the case to feel more real than that, zoom out one more level. $10 a day is about $70 a week. It is about $300 a month. It is more than $3,600 a year. That is the part small money tries to hide from you. It wants to be judged one tap at a time. It does not want to be totaled, because once you total it, the disguise starts to break. Now the question changes.
Would you knowingly sign up for a $3,600 annual leak if it arrived as one invoice with your name on it? Sometimes the honest answer is yes. Maybe it really buys back time you need. Maybe it solves a real problem. Maybe it is attached to a life you chose on purpose. But a lot of the time, the answer is no. The spending survived because it arrived in fragments. That is why annualizing matters. Monthly numbers still feel negotiable. Daily numbers barely feel real. Annual numbers force the system to introduce itself properly. That is why tiny money feels so misleading. In the moment, both directions feel equally unimportant. Over years, they stop looking equal.
And once you see that pattern in spending, you start seeing it everywhere. The harmless label, the clean number, the thing that looks solved because nobody opened the box. Spending small amounts does not feel expensive. Investing small amounts does not feel powerful. The human brain is not built to feel compounding in real time. It is built to feel the purchase today, the boredom today, the inconvenience today, the market headline today.
So the boring thing gets underestimated in both directions. The boring leak gets ignored. The boring investment gets dismissed. And over years, the difference becomes visible all at once. Shame is a bad accounting tool. It makes people hide from the numbers, and hidden numbers are the whole problem.
The better question is simpler. Where is money repeating without review? That question changes the case. A subscription is not just a subscription. It is a recurring claim on future income. A delivery app is not just dinner. It is food, plus friction removal, plus fees, plus markup, plus habit.
A car payment is not just transportation. It is depreciation, interest, insurance, maintenance, and the opportunity cost of locking future cash flow into a machine that gets older every month. An investing account is not just a balance. It is a structure that can either absorb small contributions or sit empty while the same money leaks elsewhere.
That is the second clue. Do not only ask what something costs once. Ask what it costs when it becomes normal. Normal gets expensive because normal does not need permission every time. The first month, you choose it. After that, the system chooses it for you.
Automatic renewals work because they remove the need to decide again. Saved cards do the same thing. Subscription businesses benefit from forgetting, and a lifestyle can rise after income rises, even when nobody sits down and chooses to become more expensive. Friction matters. If spending has no friction and investing has friction, money will usually choose the easier path.
That is not because you are weak. It is because the system is designed that way. The clean move is to reverse the friction. Make the leak harder. Make the build automatic. Cancel the thing you do not use. Add a waiting period before purchases that were not planned.
Move investment contributions before the money hits the part of your life where it can get absorbed. Put the raise into a rule before the lifestyle gets used to it. This is not about becoming the kind of person who never enjoys anything. That is not the case.
The case is whether your money is doing what you would choose if the full cost were visible. Because if the full cost of every recurring leak arrived as one annual bill, a lot of people would reject it. But it does not arrive that way.
It arrives in pieces. That is the disguise. That same pattern shows up in investing, just wearing a cleaner outfit. Someone buys an S&P 500 fund and thinks, good, I own the market. That can be a strong core move, but the label on the fund is not the same thing as checking what is inside it right now. An index can still be broad and yet become more top-heavy than people realize. When the biggest companies grow into a larger share of the fund, the label still says diversified, while the weight underneath becomes more concentrated. That matters because the investor experience changes, even when the account name does not. You think you bought 500 companies. In practice, more of the ride starts depending on a much smaller set of names. That does not make the fund bad. It means the label is not the evidence, and the case file is not finished when you read the summary line. You still have to look inside the box. The same thing happens with retirement numbers. Now the leak is not spending. Now the leak is missing assumptions. Someone learns the simple math. Annual spending times 25. That gives you a target, and the target matters. But a target is not a life. The 25 times spending rule gives you a target, not an operating manual. It does not tell you what withdrawals feel like in a market drop. It does not tell you whether your expenses stay as neat as the spreadsheet assumed. It does not tell you what replaces work on a Tuesday morning once the novelty wears off. And that last part matters more than some people want to admit. Work was not only a paycheck. It was schedule, identity, usefulness, social contact, and a structure that quietly organized the week. If someone retires early with a number and no replacement structure, the spreadsheet may be cleaner than the actual experience of the life. That does not mean the math is fake. It means the math solved one part of the case and left the rest unstated. Because the missing part is rarely theoretical. It is very ordinary. It is who you see on a Wednesday afternoon. It is what gets you out of the house if no job is pulling on you. It is what tells you the week was useful. It is what keeps boredom from turning back into spending. It is what replaces the small discipline that work imposed from the outside. Some people think early retirement means escaping structure. A lot of the time, it means designing better structure before the old one disappears.
Otherwise, the number gets treated like a finish line when it is really only a handoff. You stopped one system, now you need another one that can carry the life. Again, the issue is not that the math is wrong. The issue is that the visible number is not the whole system. This is the third clue. Whenever money advice looks too clean, ask what it leaves out. The $10 a day investment story leaves out the discipline of not interrupting it. The spending leak story leaves out the fact that many small purchases are emotional, social, or convenience decisions made under pressure.
The early retirement story leaves out the structure that has to replace work. The index fund story leaves out the concentration risk that can hide inside a familiar product. These examples are really the same lesson wearing different clothes. The spending leak hides inside convenience.
The investment build hides inside patience. The retirement plan hides its missing life structure behind a clean number. The index fund hides changing concentration behind a familiar label. None of these are reasons to panic. They are reasons to inspect. That is the job.
Put the case on the board. What repeats? What hides? What compounds? What would I redirect if the full cost were visible? Those 4 questions will catch more financial drift than another motivational budget rule. If you want a practical use for them, make it this simple. Find the repeating claim. Annualize it. Notice where spending is easier than thinking. Then pick one redirect, not 10. One subscription to cancel. One convenience habit to trim. One raise to split before lifestyle absorbs it. One fund label to inspect properly, instead of trusting the summary line. That is enough to reopen the case. And if your money goal is early retirement, add one more question before you call the plan complete. What is retirement replacing besides income? Maybe it is routine. Maybe it is work identity. Maybe it is social structure, a commute you hate, stress, or status. You do not need a perfect answer. But if the only answer is a number, the case is still missing evidence. That is not negativity. That is just looking at the case before it closes. This is the part I want to be careful about. The goal is not to make every small purchase feel dangerous. That would be a miserable way to live, and it would not even be accurate. Money is supposed to support a life. Some spending is worth it. Some convenience is worth it. Some subscriptions are used. Some upgrades solve real problems. Some risks are reasonable when you understand them. The problem is not spending. The problem is unconscious repetition. The problem is a financial life where too many decisions keep renewing themselves after the original reason has expired. That is where people get stuck. Not because they are broken, not because they lack discipline in some permanent way, because they are living inside systems that make the leak easy and the build quiet. So, give the build a place in the system. Name the transfer. Name the account. Name the rule. This money goes here first. This raise gets split before I feel it. This subscription gets reviewed every quarter. This fund gets checked for what it actually owns. This retirement number gets paired with a life structure, not treated like the whole answer. That is how the case changes, not through one heroic decision, through a few boring rules that keep working when you are tired. Because the leak and the build have one thing in common.
They both use time. One uses time against you, the other uses time for you. And if you cannot feel the difference today, that is normal. The difference is not designed to feel dramatic today.
It shows up later. That is why we inspect it now. Follow the money. Find the leak. Build the system.